So today we welcome to the summit Jess Vilella, who is a sales and leadership coach who helps entrepreneurs increase their income and expand their impact. I'm telling you, if you want to scale, these are the things that we want, right? We want to expand our income and our impact. She helps mission-driven business owners redefine how they sell so they have a more authentic and effective process that is based on their values. I love that. So Jess, would you first mind talking about what is the importance of coming across authentic versus what may be going on out there in the marketplace?
Yeah. Well, first off, just thanks for having me. I love this topic. I love the entire idea of the summit. I think it's so needed and so valuable for all entrepreneurs. I think the word authenticity gets thrown around a lot, right? But I think it is important that we understand that before we consider what we're doing, before we consider our strategy and our methods, I think a lot of times we want to jump to that as entrepreneurs. What do I do? How do I do it? In order to have a business that's sustainable, in order to have a business that makes sense for our lives, in order to have a business that that really is something that we actually want to build and be a part of, it's important that we first are really grounded in what are our core values? Why am I doing this? What matters most to me? And then we focus on how we are being, right? How we're operating, what we're embodying, not just as business owners, as humans, and have that guide us as we step into our methods, our strategy. And one of the reasons is, I know this is hard for people because it feels like, oh my gosh, that's some of this invisible work that a lot of times we want to skip past. We just want to get to the answer. But the fact of the matter is, if we're operating in a way that's authentic to who we are, to how we want to live, to how we want to be and what we want to build in this world, then that in turn means we'll be able to operate fully in our gifts. We'll be able to operate at our most optimal levels, and we will be able to attract and repel, I want to be very clear, and repel the right clients. Yeah. You can completely disarm the fear of losing clients by coming from that place, right? And that's a very powerful place to come from when it comes to working in your business or just living life, you know?
Yeah, it's like this polarization, which was something brand new to me. And I remember it was actually last year when I heard this term polarization, because I think a lot of coaches, I mean, including myself, as like a recovering people pleaser or struggling with like imposter syndrome, like who hasn't ever questioned, like, can I really charge $9.97 a month or $19.97 a month or $5.97, these higher premium packages? But the problem is like, we're trying to appeal to everybody.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
We want Joe Schmo down the street to be like, hey, are you going to pay me, for a $15,000 package?
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, let's really think about that, right? Any of us, when we started our business, did we start the business thinking, okay, now all I need to do is make sure I get every single client everywhere, right? Now, there are 7.8 billion people on the planet, right? We don't need all of them as clients, but there's this thing that happens when we're in that moment of trying to sell where we're thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose this client. I better make sure I get this client, right? And that's completely false. And not only that, even if you use strategies that work to do that, when you start gaining clients that aren't the right fit, you're building something not sustainable. And you're going to find yourself burnt out. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know for me, I've definitely had clients before where I was like, once you start the work, you're kind of like, oh, this isn't the right fit. This isn't the right person, right? Yeah. And so you want to really have a strong foundation with how you operate and how you're being before you set those methods and strategies in place and in motion, for sure.
Yeah. And I love how you pointed out, like, we are so hyper-focused on the strategy. And then what's interesting is when the strategy doesn't work, we start to blame and internalize it and make it about us when originally it was about the strategy. And even though we're all hungry for the right strategy, like, what good is a strategy if you're showing up feeling anxious or feeling like you're not worth it? Because, right, it's I mean, call it whatever you want, your energy, your feelings, or whatever, but people know it when we're faking. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you are not aligned right? If you're borrowing someone else's strategy, and again, there's nothing wrong with having support, having someone teach you, having someone build, with you when it comes to your strategy. But we have to be thoughtful. We have to be intentional. We have to own that as well. And we have to really align the two, right? That deeper work, that underlying sort of invisible stuff of, okay, what am I really trying to build? Otherwise, what are we doing it for? I know a lot of entrepreneurs who, like myself, came out of a corporate model for that exact reason, because they wanted to build something that makes sense for them, right? Not borrow someone else's experience and business and life and just, be cookie cutter and copy that.
Yeah. I think, and I know me personally, like my story was like, oh, when I'm working for myself, things will be easier. I'll have more time and and then you make that switch and you realize like maybe your boundaries just up and disappear. You're like scrambling to find the next customer or the chasing down the next payment. And I know a question I often hear, and I'm sure you hear as well, is like, how much should I charge? There's
Right.
like this should, like this obligatory, how much should I charge? So, just how can we start to gauge like what is the right price, and right being subjective, right? The right price for us to charge, let's say for one program that we're putting together.
Yeah. And I love that as you're asking the question, you're acknowledging the underlying feeling of the question, right? How much should I charge? And I think the thing that that ends up making this process become so pressurized is that we have this idea in our mind that there's a right answer. Right?
Absolute.
And that it's the one answer. And it's like, you get one shot and you better get it right. Because if you underprice, that's it. If you overprice, that's it. Right. So I think the first thing to do is to disarm that, right? And to say, okay, understanding that pricing is an art and a science and a process. I think once we begin to understand that your pricing unfolds over time as a business owner, it's not this thing that you've got to get right out of the gates, then we can kind of let go of that pressure to get it right or what I should be charging, let go of any shame, because there's a whole lot of that floating out there, especially on social media. People are like, you're not charging your worth. You don't know your value. You don't, like, okay, like let's everybody calm down and disentangle some of this, right? And understand this is a process. So the first thing is, yes, of course, do your market research, right? Know the range, right? With what's comparable. And sometimes you have an offer that like no one else has anything comparable to. That's exciting. So the first thing is, do that math, get some things on paper, know what the range is, but then take that and shift away from the model of pricing based on time for money. This is where you start to really open things up and see what's possible. And what I call it is just value-based pricing, right? So instead of pricing out my program based on how many Zoom sessions, how many deliverables, which, items and things I'm giving to my clients, I'm pricing based on the value of the transformation they experience, right?
I love it. Yeah. Absolutely.
So when you combine all of those things, and when you begin to understand, listen, if you're, stepping out and this is your first, your second offer, the initial iterations of your business, there is zero shame in you having a beta price, right? Today's price is just that. It's today's price. And as you optimize, as you grow, as you learn, of course, naturally that shifts. So it feels a lot less pressured if I say, okay, here's my Q1 price for this offer. This is what I'm going to do for these X number of clients, these first 5 people, these first 10 people. And I know that in 3 months, I'm going to revisit, I'm going to review, I'm going to be thoughtful, be intentional, and we're going to see where we are and we'll move from there, right? It evolves, it's a process. So I think those are some of the things that really kind of alleviate that pressure that makes it feel impossible to get it right.
Yeah. I've definitely worked with some clients who have been in business for like 10 years and they've been sitting at the same rate and typically they have a similar background. They're sort of like people pleasers. They don't want to lose clients. They're like walking on eggshells. And it's like, you can keep doing what you're doing and you're going to keep those clients. But what I found is like, again, if there's not enough skin in the game, there's no sense of urgency. You attract those who are like, oh yeah, like yeah, I'll spend 500 or 1,000 or even 2,000. And I've, I'll be honest, I've closed like $4,000 or $5,000 clients who still show up haphazardly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all relative. It's absolutely all relative. And I think when people don't have a process in place to say, okay, once I have, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have plenty of women who come to me and they are high level, high impact, offers that they have, and they're sitting at prices they've been sitting at because they don't know, well, how do I go forward? How do I reevaluate? How can I be thoughtful? How can I do it with integrity and authenticity? And how can I do it in a way that feels great for everyone? Right. And that's a skill, and that takes support. But because those skills aren't taught to us, we don't learn that in school. We don't learn that in college. Certainly didn't learn that in my corporate life. Right.
Yeah.
How to negotiate those things. Then there's a lot that's left on the table in terms of, experience of our business, and not just revenue, but how it feels to run your business. It does not feel great to know you're undercharging. It does not feel great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I love how you pointed out like charging based on the time they have with you and per session. And again, I think what we often tend to do is take on more responsibility than what's ours. And we're not educating them on where their real value is. And I know like if you're pricing based per session, your client's going to mirror that, right? They're going to go up and they're going to be like, oh, so it's, multiplied by 2, add the 1, and like, oh, so it's that much per session. And like, what are we selling? Packages of massages here? Or are we selling like where the real value is in the work they do?
Right. And the experience, right? The value of that unique synthesis of your experience, your knowledge, your skills, all your passion, your mission in life, and how you bring that together with their effort, with them taking steps to change, and then the change that actually unfolds, right? We want to think about the after picture. What is the after picture of their life once you've worked with them? What is that worth to them?
Yeah.
That's what we're thinking about when we're talking about value-based pricing.
Yep. And like and I mean, how do you know when you flip that switch? I'm really curious because I'm sure a lot of us coaches and consultants here, we're kind of going by a sales script, or we're like, well, here's the magical question in order to get that person to sign on, and it's not about that. It's not about that specific sales script. So how do we know when we have hit that point, like where their true value is? Is it like a magical question we're supposed to be asking, or how do we know when we've kind of flipped that switch on a sales call?
So I think when it comes to sales conversations, it's sort of a nuanced thing, right? It's about being fully present and fully engaged in that moment. And it's about you giving plenty of space. I think a lot of times people believe that sales conversations are about us talking.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the most significant part of what we're doing in a sales conversation is listening, right? And when you get to that place where that person is clear that they are seen, that they are heard, and you are able to paint a picture for them of what's possible after, right? And that light bulb goes off for them and they're saying, okay, yes, that is what I want. That's what I'm looking for. When you have that agreement, at the end of that conversation, then okay, I'm going in the right direction because I'm painting a picture of my experience and their experience and how those things come together, and you can only do that if you're present. A script won't do that for you, right? Yeah. That's very important because these are skills and they're built over time, and they're built with presence, and they're built with intentionality.
Yeah. I'd say if you're a coach or consultant here, like what would you need to feel safe to invest, like 6,000 or, in this case, what we're talking about here is converting to high ticket models, high ticket methods, call it whatever you want. But would you buy from someone who's just going down a checklist?
Right. Exactly. And that's sort of obvious.
Yeah.
That's a no. So, because it isn't about the checklist. It isn't about the script. I think sometimes what happens is these scripts, there's been a trend for coaches and business coaches. They come out and say, guys, I've got the blueprint. I've got the script that got me to 6 figures in 3 months or whatever, right? Whatever the thing is and how they're packaging it. And that may be the case. Maybe that is one of the tools that they used, but it's sort of an incomplete picture, right? The script, the outline, those are tools, and they're meant to support you to build a business in a way that makes sense for you. So it takes nuanced support. It takes time to take that script and make it your own, to take that outline and really ensure that you're able to be present while you use it, right? I don't want a coach who's, going through a checklist with me. I'm a real human, and my life is big and full and imperfect and messy. And I want them to be able to navigate those nuances. And the very first way someone sees that of you is in that conversation, right?
Yeah.
This is their first taste of what it's like to work with you and who you are as a human, not just what you'll get for them, right? Yes, of course, that's woven through it. But do I like Jess? Would I hang out with her? You know what I mean? All those things that make your business, especially if you are a high touch personal brand, these things are important for you to be able to weave through that conversation so that people can not only be confident in results, but they can really develop a sense of trust in who you are.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned like kind of coming up with our own. I think that's what transformed my conversations was I took like a piece from something someone gave me here, a piece from another coach, and then a piece, and it still wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then I finally was like, wait, what is working?
Yeah.
And then I planted that in there, and then calls were going better. But actually where things really transformed for me was when I realized the consultation, that first, whatever you want to call it, consultation, sales call, whatever, is actually like a coaching session itself. And I actually threw away the script completely. And I just treated it like in my case, a hypnosis session, or just a coaching session.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's them being able to get to experience who you are and how you work, right? So that they have a taste of what will it be like, as I'm going forward with Lydia, as she's supporting me on all these, results we're going after, and this transformation that I'm holding in my mind that I have a vision of for myself. How do I imagine myself feeling while I'm working with her? And you're giving them a taste of that, and it's about really being able to take leadership. That's one of the reasons that I do a lot of leadership coaching too. It's that sales and leadership, they're the same thing, right? Being able to sell well, being able to be authentic, being able to really stand in your power is about your leadership. And I think the powerful thing about what you just described is you decided to lead. You decided to stand in the power of what you do, right? And people sense that and feel that, and it felt different than you getting on a call saying like, hopefully I sell this person, I better hit all these questions.
I know. It's like, how do you know you even want that customer yet?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And ultimately sales conversations are twofold. It's not just for them to figure out if they want to work with you. It's also for you to truly get a sense of, is this the right fit? And I think sometimes we forget that piece of it. Yeah. We forget that piece. If you're not having interactions and having moments where you're really considering, okay, let me imagine this. Does this work for me? Right? Then potentially you're enrolling clients that aren't the right dynamic, that are going to create an environment in your workplace, how you do your work, that isn't right for you. No, and nobody wants that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm really curious. So many coaches and consultants, where a lot of us are chasing the next payment, chasing the next customer, which obviously leaves a lot of anxiety about our future. In fact, I know this situation exactly is what was stopping me from going full-time into my business. It was like, I don't want that inconsistency or that fear about the future or having to chase people down. And, I know there's a lot of talk out there about creating consistent flow of clients.
Yeah.
So what might be missing, or what might be like wrong with our method if we want to create more consistency with our income and with our clients as well?
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of those things that it's like a catch-22. It's like, oh my gosh, I must need a better method. I must need to, right? So the old model, and the model from most jobs that any of us have had, is, well, you should probably work harder. You should probably do more. You should probably be smarter, right? That's sort of the go-to when it comes to, oh, I've got a problem. I need to address my conversion, or I need to address my revenue stream, right? And so our first go-to, our brain says, okay, figure out how to work harder, how to be better, how to do so. But again, this comes back to that very first question you asked me, where we have to really back up first and say, hold on, how am I approaching these methods and strategies? Just that feeling of, I need another client, that feeling, that idea, right? Living in the back of your mind completely impacts whatever strategy you're about to use. It doesn't matter if it's like the most amazing strategy. You can have two people using the same exact strategy and getting very different results, right? And the reason is because one is coming from that old model that's pressured. That's, I better get this next client. This better happen by this date. I need this. I need them, right? That's the dynamic in the old model. That's the dynamic.
Right. I need to be more impressive.
Yeah. I need to work hard. I need them, right? When the fact of the matter is, when you have an offer that is powerful, that is impactful, when you have work and a mission that's transformational, this isn't about you needing that client. When I get on a sales call or I have an interaction with someone online or what have you, a potential client, I'm excited about them and the potential for their future, but I don't need them to continue on mission for me. They might be the lucky next person, right, who gets to work with me, and we're going to have fun and we're going to make a difference and we're going to change how they feel in their business. We're going to change their revenue. And because I know that and I'm coming from that place, then the clients come much more easily, right? I've had times where like I'm on a retreat and I'm getting a message, not because I was like, let me go get this client, let me chase, let me follow, let me figure this out. And you get the message, hey, can you send me a contract? I want to extend. Can you send me an invoice? Yeah, sure. Right? Because I'm excited, because I'm in the energy of the importance of the work I'm doing. And I know that it doesn't rise and fall based on whether or not this person will work with me.
I love it.
And I've disentangled that. So now here's the other side to it. It doesn't mean you don't have methods. It doesn't mean you don't have strategy. You need both, right? So you need to have that perspective, and that is going to be just as powerful as your methods. And you need to keep going with your methods. And patience. This is the one nobody likes the answer. Patience.
I already feel the resistance, but I know logically, I'm like, you can't not be patient.
You're like, no, that's gotta be wrong. No, something else, move on, next answer, right? So that's the reality. So if I think to myself about the last, let's say 5 clients that came to me without very much effort, just me like being in that space, right? It's because of work that I did before. They heard me on a podcast. They saw me speak at a summit. They went to a workshop that I did a year ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, right? And so there are all these touch points over time. So it's about remembering this is all a process. I think sometimes what happens is people online will show this little window and they'll be like, check out what I did in the last 3 months. I went from $5,000 to $100,000, but they're not showing the 26 months prior to that, right? And it's like, okay. So I think a lot of times we have a really skewed vision for the time that it takes, the intentionality that it takes, and we get impatient. And we also have some shame around the idea of having other streams of revenue that support us while we build our business. And I think we need to disarm that as well. I think there's been a lot of people out there who are like, well, if you're not full-time, like you're not taking it seriously. And if you do this other thing, or you have another side hustle or another job, and it's, we've got to let go of all that. If you are doing something to disarm pressure so that you can operate fully present in your business, that is a good thing. That is not something we should feel bad about, right? And I hear so many women, who come out and they say, well, I was supposed to get this done in 3 months. I should have been at this revenue within the first 6 months. And it's like, okay, this is a process. This is real life. And being an entrepreneur, it's no joke. There's a lot of invisible work that comes with it, right? And I think sometimes we don't anticipate that. And so really being more patient, understanding it's a process, disarming any shame with alleviating financial pressure for ourselves in whatever way that makes sense. All those things are absolutely okay. And sometimes they're necessary. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I love everything you just said. Like the importance of being able to show up in a way where there's not pressure, right? Because if there's no pressure on you, there's no pressure on who you're speaking to. It's like, okay, well, they're not a good fit. You can move right along. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I know for me personally, I didn't have that luxury. I had it for a while, but then I got let go from my job. So next thing I know, I'm in this. So I kind of had to move through that pretty quickly, the scarcity mindset, the lack mindset. And so I kind of do that on hyperdrive. But yeah, if you can alleviate that, and yeah, that's if I can remember one huge insight that I had moving from my corporate job to my own business was that you cannot have one stream of income like it, or if you do, it takes a long time to build up just that one. And maybe you can have one, focus on one day, but I was like, wow, I need at least two, like
Yeah.
at least two.
Yeah. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. I
Yeah.
think our image in our mind, because again, it's sort of that old school method of like, okay, boom, I jump off the cliff, I leave my corporate, and now I'm going to do this thing, and my business is going to be all the things. It's going to be all the things. And we throw all of this stuff onto it. It's going to be an indicator of my worth. I'm going to feel better about myself because I'm this, right? It's going to be this magical revenue stream that covers all the things in 3 months. Boom, right? And it's like, that's too heavy a burden, right? Our business can't carry all of that. And the weight of that goes with you everywhere you're trying to do business. So it's no good, right? So, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough is, okay, how do we move forward thoughtfully, right? If I'm, enrolling clients, for, 2,000, 5,000, what have you, and that's not my full revenue that I need to sustain myself. Okay, let's be creative. Let's do some things that give me the space and time to build something that matters. I don't know about you, but I've seen countless coaches out there who they do the thing fast because they just like blast out there, right? And they're like going super hard and whatnot. And then they realize, hold on, this isn't sustainable. I can't do this over time. This isn't actually the life that I want. And it's like, if that's the case, like we might as well just go work for somebody else the whole time and just,
Yeah.
So again, that patience and that trust in the process, and having support to do it, making sure that you have mentorship that makes sense for you.
Yeah.
That's not just because, oh, well, this person said that they did this in this amount of timeline. And that sounds good, but like, are they living the life that you want?
Yeah.
If you look at the way they built it, does that match with you? Or are you going to be forcing something that doesn't fit in order to get a result that you want?
Yeah.
In which case you can't sustain it.
Yeah, I've heard of people leaving their jobs after starting their business, leaving their job in like 30 days. I've heard 60 days. I've heard 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. And that's when I began to, because I was making myself wrong for hanging out with 2 jobs for 6 years. And eventually I realized like, okay, so I needed someone to kind of push me off the ledge a little bit, but there is no right or wrong. And if that's the journey you're on, right, it'll happen, right? If you're already moving in that direction of starting your own business, maybe you just started your business, maybe it's been a year, maybe it's been a few years, it's already working.
You're doing it. Exactly. That's the thing is we forget because we're like, oh, the thing out there, I'm going for this, I'm shooting for this. And I love that what you said a moment ago. You said I was making myself wrong. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, we're stealing energy from us being present. We're stealing the confidence from that next interaction with that next favorite client, right? We're stealing that energy because we're like, oh, here I am. Okay, making all these mistakes. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just pretend, like all those things that undermine us being fully present and fully in the power of what gifts we have to offer the world. And this all comes back to time. We've all been indoctrinated to this idea that we're behind. We better hurry up. We better get there. We better do the thing. And it connects back to those feelings of shame of like, oh, I shouldn't have another job. I shouldn't have this other stream of revenue that is supporting me while I launch my business, or I should, have my business up and running in 3 months, 6 months, when you're, whatever the case is, that's sort of the beauty. And the hard part is we get to decide what makes sense.
Yeah, I like to call them shame attacks.
Yeah.
like these shame attacks. And actually what actually ended up helping me just start to ignore them completely, these shame attacks, and maybe for you viewers, you can steal this if it helps you, is that I realized how much money and time sitting in shame was costing me. In fact, I remember when I got fired from my job, this was last year, and for 2 straight months, I sat around in a pity party. And if it wasn't for my coach, thank God I had my coach, she was like, hey, stop focusing on being broke.
Yeah.
Stop sitting in your pity party. She's like, if you need to pity party, set a timer so
Yeah.
you know when to stop.
Yeah.
And then it's costing you money now. And that, when I realized that, I was like, wow, I'm actually planning on being broke.
I'm choosing this. I'm choosing this. Yeah. And it's not to say that we shouldn't process how we feel about things, right? Some things happen in life that are beyond our control that just flat out suck. And it is important for us to process those, for us to acknowledge how we feel about them. But then that next step is, like you said, like, okay, now that I've given myself the space to feel what I feel about this, how do I move forward? Right? What am I making this mean? Is there a healthy way for me to take that and transform it and move into what I want for myself, and really begin to set my sights on that experience and start to see how I'm already living it? I mean, honestly, I have that conversation so much with clients. They're like, well, I hope this and I hope that. And I'm like, hey, you're doing it. You're already doing it. Like, you have people coming to your membership tomorrow. Like, it's happening. Like, yes, your goal is, you're thinking about those next 25 people who join or whatever, but it's happening right now. Enjoy it, right? Be present and remember the power of what you're doing, because that's what inevitably brings more momentum,
Yeah. I think if you're a coach here or consultant and you're watching this and you're struggling with anxiety in your business, Jess, what you just said, like, hit home for me. It was like, oh, in a year, when I've been in this for a year, then I'll know. Or if I've been at this for 5 years, then I'll know. And I love what you just said. You're like, hey, stop, like, shake you a little bit. It's happening. You're there. And that, wow, like that just helped me and my anxiety just kind of dissipate. So I think we often think, oh, by the time I hit that 6 figures, or when I hit multiple 6 figures, or when I hit $1 million, then I'll be able to relax.
Yeah. It's always this thing out there.
Yeah.
And there's always a thing out there. There's always the next thing, right? But if we're not going to actually be present and enjoy what we're doing and have that sense of wonder and interest, like, wow, it's happening. You have a business, right? You're building it. You are doing things that are on mission in the world. And that's a big deal. And that's exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. What a powerful conversation. And I'm sure we could just empower everybody all day long, but just on
Yes.
Jess, I know you have a free gift for this audience called the Sales Confidence Boost. And who doesn't need a boost in sales confidence? So Jess, would you mind telling the audience what you have for them as a gift?
Yes, I am so excited about it because it is a mini training. I call it a mini but mighty training because it's basically your pep talk for any time that you need a boost. If you're going into a conversation or you're just having one of those days, right, where you start to kind of sink into all of these questions about your business and, an existential crisis about what you're doing and how you're working, it will give you that boost in a short amount of time. It's going to be a part of a foundational core offering that I'm going to have that's going to be paid. But right now for the audience, I'm offering it for free, this mini training. So I'm very excited to share it because it's something you can use over and over.
Awesome. This is something you can take with you for life, right? Yeah. If you have a call right after this, if you have a calls tomorrow, you keep doing the same thing, you'll keep getting the same results, right? It's time to shift into, obviously, when it's we need to back up here and start to ask ourselves, how are we showing up? Does this feel safe? Would you buy from yourself? I think that's one way I reframe. I'm like, do you need to hire yourself? Do you need to fire yourself? Like, what do you need to rehire yourself? Like, would you spend $10,000 on you? And I think what that does is you can insights will start to click, right? Well, if I showed up on time more, if like I dressed a little bit more, like I was worth that. But there's so many little things you can do right now to start to shift into what you need to start to really conquer these sales conversations. So go click the link below, go get this free gift to help you on your next sales conversation. So Jess, thank you so much for being with us today. Like I said, this link is only available for 48 hours. So get it now before you go off and do your stuff and forget about it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess, for joining us in the summit today.